In this lecture, we would like to discuss another important theory, that is idealism or the idealistic theory. The very origin and development of idealism or idealistic theory can be traced back to Greek political philosophy, and that Greek political philosophy which originated with Plato and Aristotle. So, Plato and Aristotle, they became the first idealist thinker, and the early Greek thinkers, according to them, the state is the greatest moral institution whose purpose is the ethical development of man. Aristotle defines state as the union of families and villages having for an end a perfect and self-sufficient life. The state embraces within it the whole complex of social cravings and needs of man. So, the very definition of Aristotle indicates about the philosophy of idealism. So, the very classical inspiration of idealism is derived from the Greek conception of human nature, and that idealism or idealistic theory developed by Plato and Aristotle, further carried out by German philosophers Kant and Hegel, and also the French political philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who considered moral freedom as the very basis of idealism. So, Rousseau's conception of moral freedom as a distinct human quality, moral freedom implied the right of each individual to will and the very imperative duty to will a self imposed duty. And this notion of Rousseau, although developed before by Kant, the German philosopher, who may be called the father of idealism in Germany, his conception is of a different kind. As Kant expressed, the free will of the individual is the core of his thought. The state he conceives as in its nature a contractual body, and far from exalting the control of the state over the individual, he emphasizes the necessary subordination of the state to the ideal of a permanent peace of Europe, and advocates a federal league of nations is subject to the adjudication of the general collective will. And it was Hegel who gave a systematic and vigorous exposition of the theory of state absolutism. So, the very idea of idealism as According to the Kantian notion of freedom is subjective as it dwells in the realm of individual conscience and intention, and also negative as it manifests itself in duty only. Freedom, as he believed, is on the contrary objective and positive. It is an externalization and objectification of what resides in the thinking self. And as Hegel calls the whole system of institutions and influences as social ethics or social morality, which is created by a free will seeking to express itself in external objective form. So the state is an expression and the highest expression of that social morality at once in and enforced by social opinion, which lies behind the life of the family and behind the life of all other social groups and behind the life of the political community itself. So, the very idealistic thinking which originated in Greek philosophy and gradually how it developed in the hand of German philosophers Kant and Hegel and the French political philosopher Rousseau, and the very idealism could be summed up as the state lives and it has a soul, and this soul is conscious in its citizens, and to each citizen this living soul assigns his field of accomplishment. So these three different ideas that we found under idealism or idealistic theory, as one is the state lives and has a soul, and this soul is conscious in its citizens, and to each citizen this living soul assigns his field of accomplishment. So also Kant expressed that free will of the individual as because state is a contractual body, and as to Hegel, state is endowed with a real personality and a real will. Individual does not live in isolation, and state represent the social morality of all its citizens. So, in the latter period, political idealism developed in England in the hand of Green, Bradley, and Bosanque. So, according to them, as we come to know from the very ideas of Professor Bradley, who expressly states that state as a moral organism representing the principle of social righteousness. So, according to Bradley, the assimilation of the individual and the state is clearly the very idea of state as moral organism representing the principle of social righteousness. So, an individual, according to Professor Bradley, owes his personal development to the community within which it is his duty to faithfully fulfill the task of particular station he comes to occupy. So, also, Professor Bosanque expressed that state is ethically superior. State has legitimate authority and for preservation and promotion of common good. So, according to Professor Bosanque, another English idealist who represent the most modern and most faithful exponent of the German political philosopher Hegel, and according to him, the theory of the state recognizes also the concept of individual liberty and the general will of the state. And according to Bosanque, state has legitimate authority to take whatever steps it deems necessary for the preservation and promotion of common good within the organized community. It will, if necessary, prohibit and prevent the expression in external acts of any loyalty, but that to the community which it represents. And now we'll go to discuss the idealistic philosophy of Green. So, Green opposed unlimited state sovereignty and he was in favor of limited state action for removing hindrances to freedom. So, according to Green, he made a distinction between legal rights and moral rights and maintained that moral ideals were always imperfectly reflected in law. So, state action, in his opinion, should be limited to the policy of removing and the hindrances to freedom. So, these are the idealistic philosophers who, from the very origin of Plato's idealism and Aristotle's idealism, how it got enhanced in the hand of German philosopher Kant and Hegel, and how the French philosopher Rousseau also contributed for the development of the idealistic theory, and later on in England, a group of Oxford professors and scholars they developed the idealistic theory and it got developed and pushed from Green, Bradley and Bosanque. And now we would like to discuss certain critical assessment on the idealistic theory. So, the first of all, we found it is very unsound. So, it is an unsound theory. It also untrue to fact. So also, state omnipotence is highly illogical and they are also anti liberal, and they are in favor of such a state. It is not possible as society is class ridden, and they are following double standard on principles of morality. They also identify state with the sum total of human society and state as final form of human organization. So the idealist theory of state has been severely criticized as unsound in theory and untrue to fact. In the first place, we found their philosophy is abstract and metaphysical nature, which betrays an absurd disassociation from the physical nature of the theory. The idealist notion of the state as a perfect rationality or a superpersonality is non empirical and has little to do with an actual historical state. So, Professor Haderlasky expressed that the idealist theory of the state, as for example, in its famous formulation by Bosanque, remains a formulation of a conceptual state rather than of the states we know. So also, the states claim to omnipotence within and without, so consistently boosted up by the idealist thinkers, is highly illogical in considering the welfare of the state apart from and at the expense of the welfare of its citizens. Idealism puts the cart before the horse. The state exists for individuals. Individuals do not exist for the state. Liberty has meaning only for the individual and the welfare of society, and the state has neither meaning nor value unless it carries with it the welfare of the individuals who compose the state. In other words, the state and the community are not ends in themselves. So also the idealists are anti-liberal in nature, as they further brought out by the conception of a superior general will and a real personality of the state, which transcend and override the will and personality of the individual. So, Professor McIver observes, it is a new way of justifying absolutism. It regards humanity as something more than man, nationality as something more than the members of a nation. So also, we found the very thesis of idealism that in the state the wills of individuals are represented and translated does not hold good in a class ridden society. Whenever a community is governed by one class or by one race, the remaining class or race is permanently in the position of having to take what it can get. To say that the institutions of such a society express the private will of the subject class is merely to add insult to injury. Also, the idealist rather strange that the idealist theory recognizes the principle of morality in relation of one individual to another, but it disowns morality as guiding principle in interstate relations. Thus, the very glorification of war, as especially in the Hegelian version, is not logically consistent with the main arguments of the idealist theory. Also, we found the idealist theory erroneously identifies the state with the sum total of human society. As Professor McIver observes, the state is an organization created by the community with limited objects and modes of attainment. So also, another important defect we found in idealist theory, the idealist characterization of the state as the final form of human organization does not fit in with the actual evolutionary process. The state is a product of evolution. The integration of families led to the emergence of the tribe. A further integration of the tribes produced the state. And this process of integration into a larger whole is hardly complete, as the present tendency of the states reveals there is a slow but steady movement towards the establishment of a world state. So, the idealist theory has fallen into disrepute largely due to its perversions and unwarrantable deductions. Nevertheless, the theory is not altogether worthless. After all, there is some truth in the idealist view of the state as a moral entity and as a necessary institution. So, the thing that we found in the idealist, the divinity, superpersonality, and absolute authority of the state claimed by the idealist school of political thinkers came in course of time to be rejected and replaced by a sounder and more pragmatic conception of the state. As a reaction against idealism, pluralism come out to extend the idea of real will, real personality of the state to other groups and associations as well. Further, the state has more and more come to be viewed as a mere administrative machinery which might in course of time be redundant and replaceable by voluntary organizations. So, we have completed our lecture on idealism, the very origin and development that we trace to Greek political philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, and how it was further developed and carried out by German philosophers like Kant and Hegel, so also by the French political philosopher Rousseau, and finally in the hand of the Oxford scholars and professors like Green, Bradley, Bosanque, idealism further developed in England. So also we found the very critical assessment that we made on idealistic theory or idealism. So, we have completed the very lecture on idealism.